He's the co-founder and producer of the Glazed conference. He's a hybrid entrepreneur, corporate executive, who understands how big companies can partner with and strategically leverage innovative startups. And he's also one of the principals at the Stained Glass Labs, which is an incubator focused on glass and wearable technologies based out of Valley. He also sits on the board of several startups managing their go-to markets strategies. So for our panelists, we also have Sean Tam, Director of Product Management over at Inex Innovation, Kevin Shaw, our CTO of Sensor Platforms, Sam Guo, Associate of Fenox Venture Capital, as well as Jun Huang, Director of Mobility over Kaiser Permanente. So welcome.
So just while everybody kind of gets lined up and ready, we're going to hear a little bit of a quick presentation for everybody. How's everybody doing today? Everyone's excited? Woo! All right. Great. Everyone's excited to hear about the future of wearable technology and stuff. Just real quick, BlazeCon is me, and you guys are all invited with a special discount coupon. But what I really want to do is just kind of turn the floor over to the guys so you know and understand why what they're doing really matters and how it's going to affect us and impact us. So start with Kevin, who's going to rock it out. Go ahead, brother.
There you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Afternoon. My name is Kevin Shaw. I'm Chief Technology Officer at Sensor Platforms. And I want to start off by asking you a question. Certainly we're all here to understand a little bit about wearables. But why do we like wearables so much? How many people in this room have one? Why? I'm sure it's some of it's because they're cool. But something tells me that's not quite enough. There's something about these little devices that we wear that seem to understand something about us. They seem to intuit our lives a little bit. This is what makes them. Can you hear me okay? Okay. They seem to understand a little bit about us. So I'll first off ask, here's the Fitbit Flex. It's an interesting, beautiful device. Certainly it comes in pretty colors. I mean, that red, that blue. But why do we wear them? Is it because they're so pretty? I mean, certainly we've had jewelry for decades, if not centuries. I don't think you wear it just because it's jewelry. Or the Misfit Shine. It's a beautiful device, no doubt. I mean, sculpted out of aircraft grade aluminum. Hey, and it glows too. But is this why you wear it? I'm going to argue that you wear it because it tells us something about ourselves. For example, if I put that up on here and I walk with it, it'll count my steps. Now, I can count my steps too. I can go 1, 2, 3. But I'll tell you by the end of the day, I will have lost count. I'm not made for counting steps, but this little guy is. And by the end of the day, it will have a count of my steps, and it will be able to compare that with the day before and the day before. This little piece of aluminum tells me something about me. For example, maybe I want to go for a run. I'd like to know something about my run. It'd be great if I could get a graph that tells me, some little charts, tells me about my run, how hard I ran, how many steps, how long I went. This is interesting to me. So all I do is bring a little piece of printed circuit board and some sensors. Suddenly it tells me something. The problem is what happens in the middle. The measurements that I get off this little device, the waveforms, the accelerometer measurements, are frankly primitive. They're a bit of a nightmare to understand what this means. So we end up having to use something called software. It's no surprise. The challenge is, I can't use the big high-end cloud computing rules that I'm so excited about in our data centers. I need this little device to run for 8 to 10 days, and that's off a 30 milliamp hour battery. This is a whole different class of software that not only understands my emotions, but has to do with low battery. So in order to get to this next generation, I'm going to need a type of software. It's called context awareness. It goes by a number of names: situational awareness, ambient intelligence, ubiquitous computing. It all comes down to the same idea: using tiny little measurements about me to extrapolate more about my entire life. And not just my life, my environment, my context, where I am and what I'm doing. Whether that's walking, or in a car, exercising, sitting, or even sleeping. This is a whole new branch of software, and I believe that this is why wearable devices, as we use them, is so compelling to us. They tell us something about ourselves. Now, my reason for talking about this is the company that I work with, the Sensor Platforms, is a company that works on algorithmic software for sensors. We allow mobile devices, wearable devices, to understand the user, their context, be able to understand not only the context, but also to be able to regulate the power with the devices. If I'm not moving very much, I may not need to use certain sensors. And more beyond that is calibrate them, correct for sensor drift, environmental anomaly, and to be able to calculate and understand walking and pedestrian motion. With that, I thank you for your time.
Sounds good, Sean. So everyone's going to give their spiel real quick, so you can understand really who these guys are, and then I'm going to hit them with so many hard-hitting questions that they can't deal with it. You guys should share.
My name is Sean Pan. I actually don't have slides that's not as glorious, so I just want to explain this. So I spent most of my time in telecom working, but the last day I saw was the faces, so faces was really developed multiple face heart rate monitoring wearable device, right? So measure your heart rate, measure emotions, and you have a portal to show you activities in track of it. And the other related product that was involved with is called Groove. Groove is another that's very similar to Fitbit that wear around your to track the motion and everything. The difference is that it tells you when to get up. Right? If you become lazy or sitting at the desk for too long, become couch potato after doing stuff. Move, get up. So that's very different, and it also has a portal. So these are the two products I'm really to respect to this part. Otherwise, I'm spending most of my time telecom helping. Currently, I'm at a different company doing fiber-related products, but this is for consumer electronics. So it's different, so we can talk more about that. Thank you.
Hi, just like Sean, I do not have a set of slides to show my portfolio companies. So my name is Sam. I'm an associate at Fenox Venture Capital. And so what I do at Fenox is basically find exclusive companies, whether it be software or hardware. And one of the very first wearable companies that we invested into was a company called LARP, which I'm wearing right now. And what it does is it started off as a vibrational alarm. So they first came out in 2009, a group of MIT students, and they saw this vision of people wearing a computer on their wrist, and what better way to start off with than to become a fitness app that kind of wakes you up without your alarm, right? So then when you're with your partner, you're not waking up your partner. It's just an alarm that kind of vibrates with your iOS app. And so one of the experiences as a VC firm has with dealing with hardware companies is to go through a lot of struggles with, one, how to bring this product to market, how to find the exact fit, as well as finding partners with dealers to actually sell your product. And then against a whole slew of competitors, right? How are they able to be one of the very first wearable technologies to be sold in Apple stores exclusively? So that's kind of my experience and what I do at Fenox. We're very corporate LP focused, where we've helped a lot of our portfolio companies with our corporate LPs to hook them up with international expansion, as well as hardware development and business development as well. So.
Hi, my name is Asar, and I run a startup in the Valley that integrates device data and medical systems. We focus on trying to combine this data from FDA-approved devices with data from fitness-related devices and then provide actionable insights to the patients and the medical industry. At the same time, I run a large Silicon Valley group, Silicon Valley Health 2.0, where I see a lot of these startups present new devices, and the software companies that make analysis on the data also come up with new services for providers, development, foundation, Kaiser of the world. And I find this space very fascinating. I can see a lot of the crowdfunding initiatives funneling the growth of misfit wearables and a lot of other sort of wearable technologies. And I'm wondering, how will that all transition into the actual medical industry and become part of what doctors use every day?
I do have some slides here. My name is Jung Won, and I'm from Kaiser Community. So you've seen all these smart people over here. So they invent all the cool technologies. I'm not the smart one, so I'm here kind of from a consumption point of view. So from a healthcare perspective, so what would make me or my healthcare consumers or my providers want to use this technology? That's what I'm here for. So. Next slide, please. Just skip forward, please. So basically, from a consumption point of view, from healthcare, that should be categories: the fitness and wealth, and then remote patient monitoring. So the first one is for healthy people. And the second one is for sometimes sick people. So let's go forward, please. And then, so we know a lot about the Fitbit, so you've seen the Wearable and the Fitbit and off the road. But this thing I want to talk a little bit about is the patient monitoring is because of the chronic disease, the baby booming and the aging population. So we are getting more chronic disease patients, and the government is pushing for fee for performance as opposed to fee for service. So that all these drivers are going to push for some medical adoption, but we're going to see challenges in the later slides. Next one, please. These are some examples, so I won't go into that in detail, so you can see all of that. Thank you for pushing the slides. And so I just want to focus my my thoughts on a couple of slides here. So from a consumption point of view, what would a healthcare consumer or the provider want to use this? So the first one is really needs to be truly wearable. And truly wearable means it's not an extra attachment. It's something like I can see. I really don't want people to see this thing, right? It's really has to be usable. It's very easy to use. Doesn't need a lot of intervention. And the one thing that's really a challenge for the wearable devices is the data transmission. So how do we get the data? So Kevin talked a little bit about that, and how does the data get into the consumption side for others to use, and then the feedback loop is providers. Because in healthcare, it's okay, it's cool that you have all these devices, but if your doctors cannot do anything with it, then it's not going to be very useful for healthcare. So battery life is very important. Analytics is more like, again, it's to do with healthcare. So what can I do with this data that I collect? And obviously cost is an important factor. Next one, please. Now, specifically for remote patient monitoring, it's like for more like the aging population and sick people, you really have to measure all the vital signs. So just measuring the heart rates is not going to help because the patient has a lot of other indicators that will help determine the problems. Passivity is basically saying that the patient is safe and they don't have to press a button or do something. The device will just work for the patient, so without patient intervention. And one thing really that's important is data interoperability. I think in the mobile health session, if you're in the mobile health session, you'll see that point about how you actually get the data integrated with medical records. So that's very important for healthcare. For elderly people, chronic disease management. So how easy it's used for the elderly people, and that's we can go into a long talk on that, so I won't elaborate on that. So I think that's it basically from consumption, from a healthcare perspective. Most of what I have. And the same thoughts on fitness and health is that the data should not just be available to the consumer, and obviously the consumer is the focus, but for healthcare it needs to be available for the private providers as well. And the concise summary of activities and data that the consumer needs to be able to access. And the accuracy is actually very important one, because I've seen data where that compares the accuracy of like Jawbone and Fitbit of the world. When you're not walking, how does it actually detect when you're pushing a stroller? With a baby in it, and you're not really walking, your arm is not moving, so how does it really have accurate count of your walking? Things like that. Achievable goals is really have to motivate, right? If there's no motivation, the reason why I'm not worried now because I'm asking myself, why don't we fit it? If I want to go walk, I go walk. If I don't want to go walk, fit is not going to help me. Okay, that's thanks very much.
Thank you. Go ahead and pick up a couple of state-by thoughts. Things you guys need to know who I am. Just checking. All right. Give you guys this. So basically what we do is we're a glass world incubator, which is great. And we're built around this simple concept. So if you look at how things are transferring from compute and desktop computers to laptops to mobile, Wearable is just kind of the next logical step and in the future. And if in a kind of interesting article that came out the other day in Pinterest, it was just basically mobile killed the internet, the web 1.0 companies. Wearable is going to kill the mobile guys if you don't get it together. And there's such a hard transition to make from going mobile to going wearable. And basically, what we've done or what we focus on doing is we provide these two things, which is help and hope. And I know that sounds super cheesy. Anybody that doesn't think it's cheesy, raise your hand. They all agree with me. But really, what the focus is there's a lot of technology that's built into this space. And the whole purpose of what we're looking for is to bring the ecosystem together and help them with their marketing and help them with their press and help them just to generally understand that. That's the help side. We also are getting free office space together. So if you're going to work in a wearable technology company, you can reach out to us, and if you're awesome, we'll give you free office space and not take anything from you for that. The hope side is there needs to be funding, there needs to be IPOs, there need to be exits, there need to be those things. And we provide a conduit to actually take that to the entrepreneurs. And so that's kind of the whole focus. We do have a Glazed coming up, so I'm going to shamelessly plug it. If you go to and sign up with Redg, SVC, you'll get a special discount code. I won't tell you how much, but it's significant. So I only do that for a place I speak at a few days before my event because I need money and it's great to get it. So go ahead and push that over. But back to what you guys are really here about, which is these great speakers. Just for our own sanity, how many people here are with a telecom company? Raise your hand. Anyone? How many people are with a big corporation? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you guys have marketing budgets to sponsor stuff? How many of you guys are entrepreneurs or thinking about being entrepreneurs? Okay, and how many of you guys are going to build mobile applications? And how many of you guys are going to build wearable applications? Okay, all right, you guys are going to build wearable? Hey, you're going to be way better than guys that build mobile. But let's get to the questions at hand. What we're going to do, guys, in the next few minutes is we're going to unlock the mysteries of the universe and tell you not just how to make money on mobile, but also where you should build an ACE, where you should invest all your 401k stuff. And I'm going to start with Kevin, and I just want to kind of roll down, and if you guys have a differing opinion or point of view, give it to me, but why all the fuss about wearable technology now?
Well, I think that, not cheat and say, please refer to early slides. It has to do with the fact that these devices seem to understand something about us. I mean, you pick up a phone and it just remembers where you last were. I mean, okay, so I was watching the New York Times or reading an article. But with my Fitbit or my device, it sees that I've just been walking. It knows that I was cycling. It can tell me about that. It told me I cycled half a mile. There's something really interesting about the device that seems to understand me. And I think that's part of the reason the sensor phrase has been so hot in the mobile market. Steve Jobs threw the sensors on for the first time, and suddenly you can pick up a device and move it, and whoa, the screen turns when you turn the device. Now you have devices that understand that, well, okay, I got up and started walking. Well, but now it understands that while I'm jogging, and maybe I don't want to receive phone calls while I'm jogging. The device now is more a part of my life, and I think that really changes it from just an inanimate object to something that's part of my life.
And I'm going to pass, I'm going to skip over to Axar. Axar, you do a lot of stuff in health, and kind of the health-related community. Like, is the health community a buzz about wearables? Like, what's the worries? Like, what's the fuss again?
It's over the last couple of years, a lot of platforms have been created, Reg, that let wearable computing enter the consumer market in a lot quicker kind of way. With a previously 4 years ago, the only way you could build something like a Fitbit themselves, for example, you would have to build a prototype with limited amount of money and funding, and come up with something that people will actually buy. Nowadays, you have Indiegogo campaigns, and companies like Misfits have been able to raise over $1 million without actually having a real product. That makes it a lot easier to sort of innovate, a lot less risky to sort of come up with new things. At the same time, there is a big focus on the healthcare side of things and trying to figure out how to prevent chronic conditions from developing, people from having heart attacks, from having too high diabetes. And so the two things are kind of creating a convergence, if you will, where from one side it's easier for you to launch, and from the other side you're kind of beginning to see demand from the patients who are pre-diabetic, pre-heart failure, as well as some interest from the healthcare providers that are trying to see if they can use that to reduce their load.
So Sean, to push on you a little bit, guys. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Basis. I always have mine on. I was rushing down here today. It's like I have mine. There's a tan line. It looks just like this. So I promise I wear it all the time. Yeah. So from the point of view from where you were with Basis, and the whole crowdfunding service, like, how do you feel like that helps out these startups?
Well, there's a lot of ideas that's going on, and many of them with the traditional market or traditional tunnels that's trying to get money from, it's actually pretty difficult to come from an idea. So, for example, Basis, to develop a Basis prototype for everything like that, it's easily $3 to $5 million before the VC actually sees something with the work in their hands to see it. Right? So, with the current crowdsourcing, especially with the younger generation, with the trend that people say, I want to be healthier, I want to be slimmer, which is the trend today, that this kind of idea may actually fly better, right? So with the crowdsourcing, you can actually, number one, gauge how people feel about it. Number two, is there a real market for it, right? A lot of projects developed, let's say on Kickstarter, that people actually use it for marketing reasons to test out water. So I think that's actually a very tight relationship between the two.
Yeah. Sam, how many deals have you guys looked at that were initially funded through like Indiegogo or Kickstarter or some of these other things? And how does that impact how you guys look at the investment?
Yeah, so one of the very first things, so I'll give you the number. We looked at about 10 per month. That's through hardware and wearable. And then Kickstarter actually makes a huge impact because it's kind of the very first consumer measurement. Are consumers willing to try this product out? So it is a measure for VCs, us to guess, right? If this product is ready for the mainstream. And then I want to back up Sean's claim about maybe it's this consumer trend of people wanting to be more healthier to actually drive this market into fruition. And I think it's exactly that, and as well as a combination of sensor technologies being able to be small enough, and as well as be easy to manufacture to fit into a very small band. To actually, it's a combination of those two that actually makes it easier for products like this to come to market.
How many of you guys out here have ever put money into a Kickstarter campaign or Indiegogo? Oh, wow. I'll definitely come see me because I know some of the startups are interested in you. And then two, like from how many of you guys know what the Basis watch is? Have you guys ever seen it? Everybody, okay, just in case you don't know, it's an awesome piece of technology. It's a watch that has all these sensors on it that track like your body temperature, it tracks your location, shows you where you're walking around, anything else like that. It's one of the first ever to market success stories of wearable technology. Whether it's a watch, but it's so much more than that because it tells me, how much fat I'm going to be today versus yesterday, which is great. And so it's a really cool piece of technology. I'm sure Sean's got some stock in the company, so I'll be getting good with me. Raise your stock price today. So at least your ability to invest. So a couple things that I want to kind of drill down to is from a hospital perspective, right? I know you guys see all these great pieces of technology occasionally because TechCrunch or somebody writes about them. It's in the wearable space. Hey, we're going to reinvent how doctors talk to patients. Kickstarter our program, and you got to look at that and say, shit, the FDA will never approve that. Oh, that'd be great, but not ever. How do you perceive some of these technologies, especially people out here who are going to build something that's going to be in your hospitals? Can you caution us against that, or what do they do?
I think that the FDA is one very interesting one you mentioned. So, and if you want to be inventing a device that actually has a medical purpose, just be rest assured that the FDA will regulate it. And the FDA has a tendency to squeeze tighter and tighter. So, but one way to really make progress there is probably through things that you may actually get avoiding FDA regulation. I think the medical device, the reason why FDA regulates things is if it's a device that makes diagnosis or suggests treatment. In other words, if the device itself is performing some function of a doctor, then they will want to regulate it. So if you avoid that purpose, then you'll be fine. One example is that, for example, Kaiser actually has a venture, part of the organization that actually invests in startups like Wearables as well. So one of the examples of Kaiser investing has learned from Sean today, actually. There are other examples. This one is really interesting, I want to mention it. It's Proteus. And what it does is actually swallow pills. Yeah. So you actually swallow it, the patient will actually swallow it, and then inside the sensor will actually, send a message to something on your wristband and say, okay, you've taken your medication at this time, and what did you take? And that actually has because it wasn't performing a doctor's function. So it was not making diagnosis, it's not making treatments. So that is not regulated by FDA. But it has a very good purpose of connecting the data with the provider and say, okay, the patient's been taking medication regularly, and the reason why that particular use case is useful is because a lot of chronic disease patients, they get sicker because they don't take medication regularly when they're supposed to. So this technology would then actually help the chronic disease patients to be able to take the medication regularly and get probably motivated to do it. And so in summary, so if you want to kind of get into the medical devices, the wearable devices for medical use, there are ways to avoid FDA as long as you stay away from the diagnosis and treatment performing doctor function.
Yeah, so Sean, you had another thing that we talked about this for a little bit, trunking, which is not what you think it is. It's not like twerking. So Sean, tell everybody about the trunking side, because that was kind of fascinating, I think, for us.
Yeah, so while we're developing the basis watch, obviously we're trying to get as much accuracy as possible, right? So a couple of things we're looking at is if you put on your wrist here, and as you put on your legs, it works really well. We're going to start moving up. So the reason why I want to move up, when people who are jogging or something, you don't really want to do the same thing. So start doing tests. Now, one thing we started to discover that if you stick your hand out, your arm out, you wait about 6 inches from your body trunk, it becomes FDA controlled. So we're going like, oops, what do we do with that? So that was one of the issues, that trade-off between accuracy. The more closer to your body trunk, actually, more accurate it is, but promise yourself up into the FDA guys and the Kaiser guys.
So I'm going to flip back to Kevin, and I'm going to change things a little bit, talking about barriers of entry and things that we need to we need to worry about. What's the thing that's holding back that's held back wearable technology? It's been around. I don't know if you guys have noticed that this is kind of wearable technology. And also, I mean, it's just, it's been there. What's been holding it back? What will continue to hold it back? And what are some of the opportunity places for people to solve to really push the ecosystem forward?
Well, much like you said, I've got my Mickey Mouse watch here. That's wearable technology too, right?
Exactly.
It just doesn't have wireless. There's a couple of factors I think that come into play. One is the advent of the sensors, getting the right sensors in there. We've got small enough sensors, low enough power sensors, we can do quite a bit right now. But the real value is being able to keep the power down. Like I mentioned earlier, 30 milliamp hour battery is hard to keep going for 7 to 10 days if you're pulling a couple of tens of milliamps. It just doesn't work. So you really have a whole different way of designing your hardware. You have a whole different way of designing your software. To be able to keep this thing running and do something useful with it in that time frame. You can do it, as we've seen examples of. But when you want to add more functionality, well, therein lies the trade-off. I think the next part is being able to provide that additional functionality. I really like the idea of when a journalist was talking about the at-a-glance function, where now instead of I've got my phone with me all the time, but I don't want to have to pull it out in order to see that it buzzed at. Okay, is that a meeting appointment? Is that an email? Is it a text? If I can just do that quick gesture and have it come up and say, text from wife. Okay, that's really handy. It's almost in a way obviated the need for my smartphone and just put it into a place that's even more convenient. I think some of these changes become really interesting. You talked about the glass, where you have sort of additional at-a-glance information coming in there. So making a device not just sort of a passive listening mode, but actually actively responding to my environment, I think really will change the way they're used.
So I think that one of the things that should take a note, and we had an interesting post on us the other day, but it's you're literally 10 seconds closer to the customer than you are on mobile, and that's going to fundamentally change how everything works. I mean, it's like try it. Like if Tom Cruise were to walk by here, I doubt any of you guys would take a picture of Tom Cruise in less than 7 seconds. Everything done. You're like, oh, where is it? You gotta pull it out, slide, throw the code. Oh, got the wrong code. Throw the code again. Where's the damn camera app? And then you be gone. Watch, glass, anything else like that takes it's instant. Right? It's a fascinating new world that we're moving to, and I think it's going to be a big challenge for apps and applications. Question for you guys, I think is kind of on everybody's mind in the audience, and everybody's going to have an opinion. So this is not a test, but what big player is going to, assuming it's a winner take all, what big player is going to take the industry? Who's going to own it? At least initially. Everybody can always catch up, but I'd love to get you guys one quick player from everybody in the panel. Kevin.
I know they haven't actually even released a device yet, but when you have a phone that they call the Jesus phone, when the Jesus watch comes out, it's going to be kind of hard to fight that. That said, they've been somewhat slow lately, and so there's a huge window open until they do. Fitbit's done an awesome job. They've got the brand, the mind share at this point. Samsung's done a nice job coming out. But Samsung's a fast follower. I'm disrespecting the Samsung guys, right? I say that. They're a fast follower, and they still have trouble with that leadership concept. I think, right now, I'll give credit to Fitbit for winning the mind share.
I can in that sense that in wearable devices, what I found is there's a lot of marketing going to it as well. Right? For example, Fitbit or anything that's going to put on there, anybody, I guess a lot of them, a lot of people watching who have it, is I have it, I'm fit. Did I walk? I don't know. I'm fit. I have it. So there's a lot of marketing things. So we have to differentiate it too. So usually a big powerhouse, market powerhouse, it usually does have to manage over places, like basis on this.
I'm going to go a little bit off the bench here and say the Apple Watch still. They have developed a way to seamlessly integrate a user interface that is almost counterintuitive, almost intuitive actually, into your life, right? So one of the main things that I saw that has brought Apple into the way of touchscreen is and how we perceive the smartphone is if you take a gesture like this, right? Automatically we assume that this touchscreen is automatically going to zoom in into the screen or whatever you're looking at. And I think Pebble is kind of doing something like that, where it's integrating common gestures and then kind of interacting in a way where you can almost become integrated with yourself. That it's going to be a huge market driver for people to go into this technology. And then, I think in the end, one of the larger guys, maybe Apple, Samsung, or even Microsoft might even want to buy them out. But as of right now, I think Pebble is the leader in this space.
Sure. I also have a strange perspective on this. To me, hardware is very commoditized. All hardware. It's interesting for the first month, but then anybody can copy it and come out with a better version. And since we know that the technology advances every 18 months, doubles in capacity, it's not really used to say who could be the market leader. Also, we have this gap to fill, like June said, we're stuck in the quantified self movement. We're not really in the healthcare movement yet. And I think the real value is taking this data that we currently think is noisy and actually deriving value out of it. So, in my opinion, the people who are going to really own the market are the ones that will do something useful with data. So, I think people like Google or Microsoft Health are one of the best positioned to sort of take this data and combine, quantified self device data with FDA device data, integrate into the medical system, and actually become the sort of owner of the ecosystem. And at the same time, devices will continue to innovate. There'll be new Fitbits, new wearable glassware, stuff like that, even Proteus competitors. I just don't think that anybody has a true ability to control the market at this point. It's probably closer to the idea of somebody buying a couple of companies, creating an ecosystem than owning the market by themselves.
That's a tough question, actually. I would actually kind of tend to agree with Axel a little bit on the. It's very difficult to say who's one single player that will dominate, and I think there will probably be more than one. If I had to put my bet on for the general consumer audience, like independent of just healthcare, I would probably put my bet on something like an iWatch. That hasn't come out yet. The reason is because the watch itself is, I know a lot of people don't wear, I don't wear a watch. But if the watch has a purpose, like if I can do location search, I can get information I usually can get on an iPhone or an Android phone, I can do it on a watch. I would wear my watch. And the watch is a lot more, a lot less invasive than, a piece of a strange glass. And people, when I talk about, people know I'm wearing the glass and I'm taking a picture, right? And the watch is a lot less intrusive. So I think the watch has probably the best feature out of the general consumer market. But then there will be special purpose like Fitbits of the world that have specific functions that the general device may not have. So I think those kind of devices still have life of its own as well.
So that being said, let's ask that same question to the audience. How many? Raise your hand if you guys think that Google's going to own this market. Raise your hand if you think Apple's going to own the market. Okay. So Samsung? Any thoughts on Samsung owning the market? Raise your hand. Don't buy any Samsung stock. How about me? Am I going to own the market? Yes, all right. Okay, you guys all get free tickets to my conference. Need more love. So continuing down this main, where we're going, guys. real time is kind of a buzzword. Like telcos are buying real time servers because they need to buy stuff and big infrastructure companies need to sell it. How far away? Like I think real time is kind of, one, it's a Pandora's box for us because we don't know what's going to happen when real time actually happens. How far away in technology? This is probably more for Sean, for Kevin. You guys can maybe on the health side drill down a little bit on the importance or value of it. But how far away is real time, and what's holding up real time from being an actual thing? Because Robert still thinks it's already here for wearables. Which God bless Robert. Kevin, go ahead.
Real time is an interesting question. I mean, on the one hand, if I can get a display on the device that gives me real-time information about what I'm doing, that's one kind of real time. But if it has to go back through the phone, because I can't maintain a cell link off this little device and maintain the battery requirements. I just can't do it. So it's going to have to pipe back through the mobile devices, my long-haul transport. All right, if that's the case, then I'm going to transport data back and forth. I think real-time can be done now. I think some of the questions getting up on my device shows some efficiency, like the tweet, this text. I think that can be done.
What are some of your thoughts about real time?
My thoughts are a little different because working through designing the actual basis hardware, one thing we noticed that one screen size, when you select the screen, it's not big enough. Actually, you only have a couple of inches here. How much can we really display? What to display? What? And second thing is a lot of data that comes in is very raw. There's not enough horsepower to watch actually decipher it first. This is one reason if you have a basis watch happening, you have to upload it, then get something out of it. Just that there's no horsepower and there's no real estate to do that. So to do that, I would say at least a couple of years from now, processor-wise, we're getting there. But still, the real estate has to think about it. Because if you look at cell phone, it was 7 inch now, 6 inch, 7 inch phone, just because things are a little too small, you don't have enough, right? That's what it is.
I do this now. I read my text messages. It's kind of like I'm getting old. I'm all sweaty. I gotta go flirting on text. So, Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the things is we have the power, we have enough juice to support that power to process all of that, right? And that's one of the biggest problems with these large units. Their battery is only a day, 24 to 48 hours, and it has this processing power to monitor the health, calories burned, et cetera. But is the battery ready for it to do all of that in the rest itself? And it's not, right? It's still sending data to the mobile smartphone, processes all of it, and then display on your phone. So I think it's the battery technology that's kind of at the wall to block real-time technology.
Guys, how important is the real time to you and your business and then, like on the medical side, medical device side?
So it depends on the application or the use case. If you have a heart failure patient that you're monitoring post-discharge, real time could be really useful. It doesn't have to be a always wearable sensor in this case. It could be a body scale that's just looking at your body composition, noticing that you're all of a sudden gaining a lot of water. That would suggest that you're about to have a repeat of heart failure. You don't have to tell the patient the second that you identify that. You can take some time to actually process it, have a nurse stop and look at it, but within the next couple of hours, that'd be really important. Similarly, in the case of diabetic, you might not need to alert the nurse every time something has a higher than normal value, but if there's a trend, an overall sort of a trend that shows that you have high elevated glucose level, that could be a really useful thing. I think because wearable computing is still sort of very noisy and nascent, just really early, it's kind of hard for me to imagine real-time application outside of emergencies, so like life alert. It's a red button that seniors wear around their necks, and if they fall, they can press the button, and an emergency vehicle will be sent to their home. or cardio net, something to wear and detects your heart failure. And if that happens, also a medical emergency vehicle gets sent to your house. Those are very, very specific applications that is really useful. And it's hard for me to imagine how my watch or my Fitbit or my Shine or my Pebble will be able to give you that kind of data at this point.
So we're getting close to the lightning round. We've got just a few more minutes left, so we're gonna answer 2 more questions about where the money is, because I think you guys are really interested because no one really knows. So we're gonna pretend like we do for a few minutes, but I'm sure we'll have really good reasoning as to why we sound so positive about it. And then we'll have a couple questions. Okay, perfect. So Kevin and Sean, enlighten our guests as to how you guys see the monetization unfolding in the future. Is it licensing? Is it transactions? Is it subscriptions? And then saying like, what do you look for in business models when you guys invest? And then you guys on the outside, what have you guys seen? What's a successful way to approach hospitals, and what kind of business models do you look for on the medical side that may be different from these other guys? So go.
Starting off, these models start off with the hardware-based model. You sell the widget, you sell the basis, you sell the Fitbit, and you get to keep it for as many years as it will run. You get the money up front. That's a great way to start off the industry. I think the transactional model, the ARPU model, average revenue per user on a monthly basis, I'm not sure I see that coming. They tried it with the internet. The only people making money off that are the wireless carriers. They're making $900 a month on the transaction worth of bytes per month. They're making the money, but I can't see any of the wearable players making that. I think the third option is pulling it off the data and using the data. Now, I know everybody talks about location-based advertising. They're talking about 5 years, and I still don't believe in it yet. I've seen some interesting examples of it, but I just don't see it flying yet. Now, I do think there is an interesting example of being able to, Apple with their new iBeacons. Let's go into the jeans section of the store, and it identifies that, well, on your jeans, do you want something, and here's an ad. I still have hesitations on that. The problem with the cloud-based data collection is the ownership of this contextual data. I think the privacy on that is going to be a real issue. Someone's going to make money off processing it, but I think, the security and privacy issues are going to turn out to be a real sticking point on that one. But that's going to take another year or two before that really starts to make sense.
From my side, it's hardware is actually very hard to make money out of, especially consumer electronics. Especially if you sell business watch, if you sell this for $1,000, $2,000, with like bicycle, great. I would say hardware. But as it stands, $299 give you $199 give you discount, even get it for free, you get what, $90, $50 already. If you sell building this, maybe go IPO, but it's not going to happen overnight. So we were looking at way to how do you monetize this thing. Of course, portal is one thing, and the data is one thing. Now, the data we run into a lot of dollars. As you know, for example, a lot of data, you think data is actually free, but for free, it's not. China is a very close market. When you try to go to China, you have to have your own data center within China, keep your data in China. There's no way going to fall back to the US. That's a violation. The US has similar things, so what do you mean by flowing data? You can't pass data to somebody else's data. Right? So that was a problem. So perhaps one thing that we can think about is how to use this data to do for some sort of recommendation or health network or something. I think those guys, commercial guys like Dr. Oz, all those guys actually make more money out of it by just saying, hey, look at this data, you need something, and everybody's succeeding.
Yeah, so one of the I think, you have this band that has a accelerometer, a gyroscope, that kind of monitor, your habits, what you're moving, where you're going, your GPS location. I think the monetization comes as a CRM for professionals and the enterprise. And I can't really say what Lark is doing. They have actually a very good announcement coming up very soon, but I can't say what they've done so far in this model and this space is they actually, so well, there's a company called, I know everybody knows Brother, which makes this printers, right? Well, what a lot of people don't realize, actually Brother is a conglomerate, and they have a high-tech gym in Japan, a chain of high-tech gyms, augmented reality, computers everywhere, and they actually partner up with DART and allow the gym to monitor their patients, and then they're charging a CRM enterprise amount for Brother to actually recommend exercises, telling them, hey, you've been missing out on your gym schedule, you should probably come back and get another trainer to get you back onto your fitness track. So it's the creativity of what's already in there to help you monetize. I think that's what we look for and what Lark has done so far.
I'm gonna let you go first this time. Especially since he's representing the healthcare provider. So.
Thanks. That's so kind. I think from a healthcare perspective, I think the number one key to having adoption and having people buying the devices is the question of data. And if you have a way to get the data into the hands of these doctors, then you crack the bag. And I will give you just 2 examples, because I listed 2 categories of healthcare devices. One is fitness and wealth. The other is monitoring sick patients. So in the fitness world, I'll give you one example. So probably some of you know that Kaiser uses electronic medical records from Epic. Does anybody heard of Epic? So Epic is the electronic medical system vendor that we use. And Epic is probably, you will not be surprised, maybe a couple years from now, they will give people APIs to put data into the medical records. Now, once that's available and your wearable device, once you capture the data, have a 2-step process to get the data into the medical records. Step number 1 is to filter out the noise. So your device is measuring data all the time. The doctor doesn't want to know that. Any heartbeat rate at any second, the doctor doesn't want to know that. The doctor wants to know significant events. So that means the step number 1 is to translate the raw data into actionable information. Okay, you capture the events as well. The heartbeat is now over this limit, or your sugar level is over this limit. And then you use the EMR medical record APIs to put the data into the provider's hands. Once you have that capability, you will not only get adoption from the consumers, because from the fitness point of view, the consumer has a device, and it will motivate to use it if actually the doctors can act on it. But also from the provider side, even if the consumer doesn't buy the device, let's say from a Kaiser or another organization perspective, we want to keep the patients healthy, because we don't want the patients any sicker. So I think I can imagine even the healthcare organizations like Kaiser would probably even be willing to buy those devices and give it to the patients. And I think that data integration is really the nut to crack.
Yeah, it's, I totally agree. Essentially, the quantified self-fitness market is big. It's a great entry market, but with about 1/6 of our GDP being spent on healthcare, and with about 75% of those costs going to chronic patient management, it's clear that the real money is there, not in fitness. It's in actual medical application, in reducing emergency visits, reducing heart failure, kidney failure, what have you. There's a lot of money, several $1 trillion being spent every year just to fight this in a sort of hand-to-hand kind of way. And then we can have monitoring devices that could tell you, hey, you should do the following 5 things to reduce the chance of going into emergency room the next week. I think a lot of patients would be really willing to do that.
So, real quick questions to the audience. How many of you guys would wear like a pair of Google Glass? Glass, okay. How many of you guys would let a chip be installed in here? Anyone? Yeah, I'm at a company that wants to test this stuff out, so we'll talk later. Okay. What about pacemaker? How many of you guys have a pacemaker? Raise your hand. Oh, give me a break. I would have one. What about glasses? How many of you guys just wear regular glasses? Okay. There are people wearing them right now that did not raise their hand. You know, obviously not listening. Okay, so I think I want to do one last question and then turn it over for a few minutes to the audience, or just ask, you know, so save your questions, because if they're bad, I'm gonna make fun of you. Not really, but what's the moral implications of this type of technology? The always on, always connected, integrated, tech. Is there anything morally objectifiable? And should we be concerned? What happens when we can actually hack people? Because I'll figure it out. Just kidding. Not really. So okay, go ahead. Kevin, what's the moral? Actually, let's start with June. You did that. We're gonna give you some love there. We'll just roll it all the way through. June, morally okay or not?
Morally, I would be okay. And and it's funny that I said that because I'm from a healthcare organization. So, and healthcare organization is very, very big on compliance. So privacy, security, HIPAA compliance, FDA, meaningful uses, all these regulations, and we spend millions and millions of dollars in trying to comply with those government regulations. So, I think from the regulation perspective, it's a problem. But from the patient's perspective, actually a lot of times the patients probably don't really care that much. Like, if I'm sick, and if somebody has a way to make me feel better and heal me at a faster pace, I'm willing to sacrifice my privacy and keep the data. But the government regulates it, so that's a different story. So from a patient perspective, if I'm a patient, I wouldn't have a moral issue.
Yeah, I have the same feeling, is that if this helps save my life, or save the lives of my loved ones, or increase their just lifespan, or make them live a better life, I am very open to sharing my data. In fact, if the NSA would give me all my data for my doctor to use, I would be very happy, because they know more about me than anybody else, for sure.
So, as you see, we always look towards the consumer side and try to protect the consumer trends. A lot of times we are wrong, but here's my perspective. I think it's kind of there is kind of a drawback for people being too social and having so willing to give away data, that it's popping up everywhere where you have these little other services where people are kind of hiding their data now, right? And so it's kind of, are people going backwards and become less social, or are they just really willing to give out the data? And that's something that we have to always think about, right? If you look at all these chatting apps, Line, WeChat, which has hundreds of millions of users, then there's also the other side, which is Hack, which is a closed community of people you accept. So I think there's there's a two trend, right? Where there's one side where people are just completely okay with giving their data, and there's also another side where people are going backwards and trying to conceal the data. And the whole thing with Facebook and them saying people are more and more willing to be social, I think it's actually the opposite. There has been a lot of data where people are kind of on their phone, Twitter, Facebook, and all that stuff, because you're so easily connected to your friends from around the world that you don't actually take the time to look around yourself, right? And then so there might be a trend where we think where people actually are becoming more closed and not willing to give that data. And then so it's something that we always have to keep in mind of, and so that's kind of the more implication.
From what we saw, is that a lot of data that we collect to this system is we collect a lot of data, right? And most time we actually leave it up to users. When you don't want to give out your information associated with it, you basically untag it. You still have the data. Now, what's so good about this data is, if you think about it, is there any database for health records in the world today? All these connected health together to give you the largest database of human reaction to your environment, your data, everything. What's the benefit? advisor for analysis, it benefits a lot higher education to actually understand this. So this data is actually quite valuable. Now, once you mix it into different groups without tagging, probably it's okay. And a lot of people that we see, we talk to about actually say, as long as my name's not tagged to certain things, you say this, that, that, what, that, this. I mean, you can detect actually somebody got drunk, literally looking at data. Right? As long as I'm not getting tagged and I'm got drunk, go ahead, I can contribute my data as part of myself to the bigger.
All right. I got an idea. Follow me on this. I'm going to set up an email service. I'll give you a free email account, but I'm going to scan every word you read right. And I'm going to give you advertising. Does anybody mind that? Anybody using Gmail? Yeah, I keep going back to Scott McNeely's comment. There is no privacy. Get over it. There was an article in TechCrunch about a week ago about the Maginot Line, where we all have this perception. You know, the French in before World War II built the Maginot Line of fixed emplacements to protect against Germany. The Germans came, and what they do? They went around it. It was a real nice wall of emplacements. We all believe that we have security right now. Well, the NSA just walked around it. We like to believe we have security, we like to believe we have privacy, and that makes us feel good. I'm not sure we really have it. We've already given away the keys. The barn doors are already open. So I know we're all going to try and say, yes, I want to protect against this, but we're also going to give away so much data that it's already going to be well understood what we're doing. I think we're going to be jostling with this, struggling with this for some time, but I really think that the cow's already out of the barn while we're old puppies.
I'm sitting here thinking just about when I eventually get married, my wife's sitting around with her friends talking about the algorithm to get me to take out the trash, right? And how they can hack my brain. Can you just say it? There's so many things that exactly. I'm asleep and she's logging in and just coding away. I hope she's good at coding. Okay, I think we've got time for maybe 1-2 questions. That's it. Unless we've answered everybody's questions, which is awesome. Does anybody have just a burning thing that they got to say that would impress us all? Anyone? Anyone but Sophia? Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
I think the most critical technology is the wearable sensor. It's not there yet for general use and reliable use. So until that Apple will grab it and they will take the market. That's not going to get. That would be better than.
Critical technology is the wearable sensor.
I think there's some technology there that is reliable, low cost, multi-purpose sensor wearable devices. I call the IO devices to be mobile phone. If that happened, eventually it would be integrated in the device. But initially it would be like a peripheral to the cell phone. The processing would be done on the cell phone or the cloud. Will you comment on that?
So Kevin, I think this question is best kind of pointed to you. Do you see a lot of phone I was worried it was me. Do you see a lot of cell phone companies trying to just something that's easy? I guess they all are, but what is the driving factor around them leveraging sensors and the new technology? And do you see them wanting to interact with the phone or wanting to interact with something other than just the phone? Where do you see this going?
It's the old phrase about throwing spaghetti against the wall, the sea bubbles stick. The OEMs are constantly asking us, what's the next sensor? What can I stuff in the phone next? The consumers might possibly get excited about. The last great one was the gyro that Steve Jobs threw in. No one's actually using the gyro, by the way. You all have a gyro on your phone and probably haven't used it in weeks. But it's there kicking up $1 a bomb. They're still trying to put more sensors in there. You've got a humidity sensor. You need to know that humidity in this place. There's some interesting ones. Gas sensors, I think, might have some potential. Methane and carbon monoxide become interesting. They're looking at colorimeters. They're stuffing every possible sensor in there. People really like devices that sort of know a little bit about their world and tell them something they didn't already know. But we keep running out of
what is going to be the next step? Putting something on your wrist adds a little bit more information, but they're struggling to find something that they can stuff in the phone.
How many sensors does the basic watch have, John?
At least 5, 6 sensors.
5 or 6 sensors on a tiny watch. That's pretty awesome. Okay, one last question.
Actually, I'll add a comment there. Does anybody know how many sensors are on a mobile phone? About 17 or 18.
Rock and roll. Yeah, gentleman in the back. Yeah, also everybody here. It's okay.
I'm wondering if anyone in the panel has any comments or suggestions about delivering one wearable device from the company of.
Okay, so telepathy. So just so you guys know, it's a little screen that sits about yay big. I know Goro. I know So it's a little screen, delivers HD, and allows you to sense emotion. I think of all the other end users and stuff like that. I don't know. Have you guys got a chance to see telepathy? Invest in that? Anything? School tech? You know? All right, those questions for me. I think I respect what they do, and I think it's super cool. I think that, and I've worn there's pictures of me like checking them out. I think the use cases will be interesting that develop out of it. I think they need to rush to have an open API to have apps built specifically for a lot of these things. Understanding the emotion of the general consensus of everybody around me is not necessarily a good thing, because I'm kind of happy. And I can just imagine everyone here in the room is like, oh, I'm at a conference and we're all bored. I would never want to know that if I was putting on an event, right? It's like, oh my God, what do I do? I'd start juggling and throwing fire sticks at people. I don't know, right? I would go crazy. But I do think that there is something about a collective consciousness, and I believe that technology is really built to bring us together. I mean, from the first guy that built a fire in a cave, and invited his buddies over to tell stories and drink grog. I don't know what they drank when the fire was first made, but I'm sure it intoxicated you. So they can tell stories. So that's kind of a fundamental belief, and I think that they're on the right use case there. The technology is cool and it's interesting, but it's just, it goes back to a lot of hardware stuff. It's hardcore technologists that build really cool technology. Where's the business case inevitably going to be? And that's part of what Stained Glass Labs and the Glazed conference is all about, is pushing that discussion forward, because we need to know, where the money's going to be made. But they've got some good ideas, and I back them. I'm a supporter of those guys. So so I think that does it. I think we're at our time. Thank you guys very much. Thank you everybody on the panel. They did a great job.